What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I am back with an album review. And going solo today, well, mainly because I think I'm probably the only one out of the Thralls that actually knows who this band is. I know, shame on them. But I really wanted to cover this one because this kind of goes way back to, like, my love of, 90s Victory Record stuff. We are going to go over the latest offering and first full length in 30 years from Deadguy with their new album, Near Death Travel Services. This also comes out on the 27th of June on Relapse Records. This band formed in 1994 in New Jersey. This is only their second full length. Again, it has been 30 years since their debut full length, Fixation on the Coworker, which admittedly I'm not familiar with. I have yet to actually listen to that one. I got in this band courtesy of the old school Victory style samplers. They had a track on Victory Style 2 in particular called Turk 182, which is off of their 1996 EP, Screaming with the Deadguy Quintet, and I really dug it. But, I kind of got distracted by a ton of different bands on there, and I never managed to find a copy of that EP. So oddly enough, this is the first piece of Deadguy stuff that I actually own that isn't just a track on a compilation. Now, this band broke up in 1997 and just reformed in 2021, and again, first album in 25 years. And this band has some serious importance in terms of metalcore's evolution, especially in terms of mathcore, because this band is often regarded as one of the progenitors of mathcore itself, predating Coalesce, Dillinger Escape Plan, Botch. In fact, I know that Dillinger Escape Plan was influenced by this band. So I heard a couple of the singles, the awesome music videos they shot, and was like, yeah, I have a feeling this is going to be fun. And I gotta be honest, this is the comeback album that I didn't know I was waiting 30 years for. This band still sounds like they are hungry for fucking blood. And probably a bunch of other stuff too, because this album is a wild, dark, riffy, but spazzy sort of ride. Now, whereas Dillinger Escape Plan and Botch and, Coalesce, I feel like we're kind of pushing the limits of extremity when it came down to mathcore at the time, this band still is very much still rooted in just flat out hardcore / metallic hardcore. You still get a lot of thrashy riffs on here, Barn Burner, War with Strangers, The Alarmist, and the totally not a My Dying Bride cover, The Forever People, which I really had to double check on that one because, a hardcore band covering My Dying Bride, I mean, admittedly, that would have been kind of interesting, but I was kind of glad it wasn't. But the songs shift around from D beats, machine gun riffs to these really atonal, again, alarm clock, squawky riffs and distance. The guitar work in here, I think, is absolutely awesome. It's low-key, very technical, and very flashy. You get a lot of these atonal, noisy riffs complementing big hardcore chugs. And when this band slows down, they kind of settle into these sludge metal / noise rock hybrids of breakdowns occasionally. The opening track, Kill Fee, at the end of it, it almost feels it goes from spazzy mathcore with off-time drums, shouted vocals, and these weird droning atonal melodies to these big sludgy lumbering riffs and more mid-tempo grooves that feel more akin to Melvin's, maybe even a touch of Jesus Lizard or even Unsane on here. There's definitely a bit of noise rock in this band sound, but I feel it's kind of blended with the metalcore stuff. And it really makes for just an interesting sound. Knife Sharpener, which is a short, just violent outburst of a song. There's a lot of stuff in there where the just layers of dissonant, noisy guitars, it feels kind of like an Unsane song. Now, mathcore in general, I find, just a very challenging listen. It took me a while to get into Dillinger Escape Plan and Botch. Those bands were kind of head scratchers. This, I feel because it's still more rooted in hardcore, there's enough moments where it's just D beats and just flat out chuggy riffs and such, that I feel you can kind of grasp this a little bit easier than those bands. This feels maybe a little bit more comparable to Every Time I Die or even Better Lovers. You still have good solid grooves, good riffy hooks, but you get that kind of off the wall, very twisted, sort of anxious vibe that you get from Dillinger Escape Plan and the like. And a big part of that, at least for me on here, were the vocals. Tim Singer. Tim Singer has this awesome delivery where it's these hardcore shouts and bellows, but there's this vibe to it with his, mutterings and spoken words that are all throughout this album. Even on parts where you feel it's just going to be an instrumental build-in to the next part, whether it's a breakdown or like a frantic D-beat section. It keeps this album loaded with like just nervous, anxious energy. The way his vocals move through like the transitions and such and change and build up and get more like anxious and violent, it's almost like he's like vocally scoring a panic attack. The whole vibe of this album is just twisted and dark and emotional and kind of like unhinged. It's kind of comparable to a very emotional, angry drunk. Like they're very unpredictable. They're muttering to themselves about who knows what. There's, like a whole internal monologue that's going on in their head, but they can't keep it internalized. And it just comes out as, mutterings of insanity, emotion, possibly weeping and then vomiting. And then if you've been to one of the parties I've been to, one of your buddies might try to take a swing at you in this state. But it's that unpredictable energy that I love on here. And the vocals are such a huge part of that because they match up with how like twisted and dark the music is. New Best Friend in particular, I like how it opens up with these isolated drums. In fact, the drum beat kind of reminded me of the start of Harrison Bergeron off of Snapcase's Progression Through Unlearning, which is like Victory Records royalty in my mind. So an old school Victory Records band reminded me of another old school Victory Records band. I don't know, that's just kind of cool. But the bass comes in and then the vocals that come in with this like muttering, sort of rambling, like again, it's that weird internal monologue. Like there's a lot of stuff that you feel like should be kept in that, well, isn't. Like for example, on the song The Long Search for Perfect Timing, which to me that has to be like a mathcore inside joke there because of all the off-time stuff. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too deep into it. But there is a repeated refrain from Tim where he says, "Give me a knife, this should be more fun." There's a lot of stuff on this album where he does refrains of just like, wow, that's just kind of dark, but also kind of parallels maybe what I'm feeling with this album. But back to New Best Friend, there's a lot of that vibe as he's sort of building up, and then you get into these like very like dissonant, almost kind of like thrash riffs. There are moments in here that it feels like it kind of like overlaps with like crossover, but imagine crossover being played by like Voivod. Actually, there's points in here it kind of does remind me of like early Voivod when they were a little bit more punky, because there's a lot of like atonal, twisting, dissonant riffs. And again, how the guitars play off of one another, it creates this just, again, kind of like unnerving atmosphere. But after all that, the song descends into this dark, creepy, very like twisted breakdown with these really just, I don't know, like sinister melodies on top of like the main riff. And then Tim's vocals start sounding a little bit more sinister themselves. And again, like everything is about this like kind of like matching of the vibe of the songs and wherever these songs go. And these songs are unpredictable. They're twisted, but again, they're still rooted in like solid riffy hooks. The Alarmist in particular has like, one of my favorite riffs at the end of it. It's just this good sludgy 4/4 time groove. You get this hooky kind of like Melvins-ish riff at the end. It's a good balance of like riffy madness and then like more like digestible, straightforward stuff. And it makes the songs interesting as they kind of just take you on a roller coaster of emotion, like going from anxious to explosive rage to like, occasionally something a little bit more cathartic and reflective. Like back to The Long Search for Perfect Timing, there's a lot of riff changes on there, and each riff change definitely seems to like, capture a different mood. And while most of the song is just biting and snarling and just packed full of just mean as shit riffs, the end of it, you get this kind of, while I wouldn't call it like a quiet reflective moment, but you do get a moment where it feels like it's reflecting on like all of the rage it put out there. Like it came in, kicked around your fucking furniture and shit and was a complete asshole. And then as it was leaving, after it got kicked the fuck out. But there's this like reflective, like more like melodic passage that, I don't know, like it feels like it's like kind of a reflective moment on like, what was going on previously. And there's some really interesting atmospheric moments on here. One in particular though that it caught me off guard, like big time. The last track, Wax Princess. Probably one of the more straightforward songs. I mean, it comes in spazzy, it comes in angry, which a lot of these songs are just explosive as hell. You get some parts where there are build-ups, but a lot of them just come in and just fuck shit up immediately. But the song moves into like, like some D beats, you get some more like atmospheric, like kind of like dissonant, riffs behind that. And then you get this brief little like empty pause before it settles into this kind of like hefty breakdown groove. And it just sticks with it. It sticks with it all the way to the end. And I was just kind of like, locked in it, head banging. I was like, dude, this is really cool. And then out of nowhere, this AI voice comes in, kind of monologuing about, well, whoever typed its life. First off, it's a female voice. In fact, it's like the Siri voice, which I'm always hesitant about saying her name out loud because I feel like my phone's always listening. That's not just because this album has like an anxious energy, like I legit feel like my phone is always listening. But it just pops up, like kind of out of nowhere. And it was such a weird little part in the song that I literally, checked my computer to see if I had like a tab open or I was watching a YouTube ad of like some bullshit product they were trying to sell me. But no, it was the song. I paused it and was like, holy shit, it's the song itself. And it's playing off the fact that Tim is still like bellowing, all the anxieties and just rage at the same time. And it's a really just like unnerving moment because you hear this, albeit pleasant robotic voice talking about, being underpaid, overworked. Life itself is just squeezing the joy out of them. And I got this weird disconnect because, it's a very human thing to talk about that sort of stuff, but hearing a very inhuman voice do it, I don't know, like there's a disconnect there. But at the same time, you have Tim bellowing behind it. And what was really interesting is, while it was locked on this riff and groove, it started fading out, but it wasn't dropping the volume on the AI voice. So you get like kind of an isolated moment there where she's like the most prominent thing. And then it fades back in and then everything fades out together, which was a really interesting way to close this album. This album was a wild ride and there was a lot of stuff that this reminded me of. Like there's some stuff I definitely want to go back and listen to. Tim Singer's voice in particular, I feel like Poison the Well was really influenced by that because like a lot of their later stuff, it's almost the same delivery. And you can definitely hear the influence this band had on like all the mathcore bands that I mentioned too. And even some stuff that wasn't necessarily mathcore, but it was kind of like outside the box hardcore / metallic hardcore. Again, like, Snapcase and such. But this was just a flat out awesome listen. And it doesn't necessarily feel like just like nostalgic or anything like that. It feels fresh and fucking vibrant and relevant. Like, this feels like 2025. What a year for this album to come out. As far as any negatives on here, I would be hard pressed to find any, really. This album is tight. It runs about 36 minutes. There are no tracks in here that I would say are filler. All of them have like some interesting, unique traits to them, but it's all very cohesive. Like it doesn't feel like a mishmash of like different tracks. Like this is a well-paced, well-thought-out album. I suppose the only like thing I could say that's maybe negative, but honestly not really, is this album legit does make me kind of feel anxious listening to it. I can't really call that a negative though, because I don't know, albums that make me feel something, that's like a legit connection to it. And I was just completely locked in this. I've listened to this like 3 times now and I am hooked. This is absolutely awesome, and I'm going to go ahead and give it 4.5 stars. Holy shit, what a comeback album. This not only kind of brings me back to like, again, like listening to Victory Records and those Victory Records samplers, which I believe I own just about all of the Victory style compilations. It also feels, again, like very relevant in terms of like metallic hardcore's comeback here. And like this is a band that I think really needed to like kind of like showcase the style again. This kind of does like everything that I really like about mathcore, but it doesn't overdo it. And there's enough like just straight up hardcore in here to be like more relatable to people that aren't like huge into mathcore. Like if you're a longtime Converge fan, this should be relatively easy to get into. It has that same level of spazziness, but there's something else about it that feels a little bit more unhinged and anxious and unnerving. And that is what, again, I really connected with. Like, I can feel this album. Also, production here was marvelous. This was produced by Steve Evitz, who actually worked with Dillinger Escape Plan, and mastered by Brad Boatwright, who has worked with a ton of bands. This sounds great. The drums are crisp, guitars are heavy. Everything just sounds great on here. But yeah, this is a punishing, almost exhausting listen, but exhausting in like a good sense, I would say. Like, yeah, this album feels like it just worked you over mentally, but I don't know, like it feels rewarding. You feel stronger having like listened to this album. I don't know. I feel like I'm ranting and gushing too much here, but yeah, if you're a big fan, again, of Dillinger Escape Plan, Botch, Snapcase, Coalesce, Every Time I Die, Better Lovers, stuff like that, oh my God, check out this album. It's fucking awesome. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They're only 99 cents, and our lone perk is doing a members-only live stream, which I know we haven't done one in a while. We do need to get down to that, but again, external factors in terms of scheduling it, it's been a little bit difficult, but we will get down to it. Anyway, memberships are the main way to support the channel now, and if you would like, there's a join button down below, and you can go ahead and smack that thing and join in on one of our members live streams where we'll talk about all sorts of like weird shit. Not that we don't talk about weird shit in our usual streams, but I do feel like in our members only ones, there's a no holds barred sort of aspect to it where you can legit ask us really anything. We're pretty much open books, except this book is, well, it's a coloring book, I'm sure. And of course, thank you guys so much for all the love, the likes, the support. It means the world to us. It's amazing doing this. Got some bigger videos on the docket. The Sepultura Greatest Hits, or at least the first part of it, will be out relatively soon. And we have a date to record the At the Gates ranking, so that's going to get done. And after that, we're on to Immortal. And I'm pretty fucking stoked for that one. But yeah, tons of stuff coming up on the channel, and we hope to see you all there. So one more big thank you, because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.